Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Psychedelic Vantage. Today, Adam and I have the pleasure of interviewing Doug Drysdale, CEO of Cybin. Cybin is a clinical stage biopharmaceutical company on a mission to create safe and effective psychedelic-based therapeutics to address the large unmet need for new and innovative treatment options for people who suffer from mental health conditions. The company is currently developing CYB003, a proprietary deuterated psilocybin analog for the treatment of major depressive disorder, and CYB004, a proprietary deuterated DMT molecule for generalized anxiety disorder, and has a research pipeline of investigational psychedelic-based compounds. Doug, welcome back, and thank you so much for coming on the channel. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, guys. Jake, Adam, good to see you again.
As
Nice to see
always,
you.
yep.
So to get things off, I'll start off. So before we get into Cybin and the company's pipeline programs, I would like to hear your thoughts about the recent news of the FDA issuing a complete response letter to Lykos Therapeutics, requesting an additional phase 3 study of MDMA-assisted therapy for the treatment of PTSD. From your perspective, what impact do you think this will have on the industry as a whole? And specifically, what does it mean for Cybin?
Well, I think you guys probably agree that the CRL was not really a surprise after the AdCom. I think it was fairly clear that some more work had to be done. When I talk to other psychedelic companies, CEOs, you guys, other analysts in the space, I think there's consensus that this is quite specific to this submission. It was simply, to be fair and kind, it was simply incomplete and more work needed to be done. So in the near term, really disappointing, this delay for patients. And I think that's the critical thing. Long term, though, maybe it's a good thing. Maybe that this will encourage or force companies to really pay attention to their programs, make sure the trials are robust, increase the likelihood of success and approval based on that, and we'll have more robust treatments in the long run. So. I mean, clearly, this news has been dragging on a bit. The media doesn't seem to want to let go of it. It's still out there, and it's having some impact on psychedelic stocks, which is disappointing. But I don't think there's a read-through here to what we're doing at Cybin. We've been very thorough from the outset. None of the issues raised at the AdCom were a surprise, nor were they new. And I think it was a bit odd, actually, is that the AdCom, they spent so much time talking about functional unblinding. And in reality, the functional unblinding wasn't why there's a CRL. There's a CRL because the submission was incomplete. And dealing with functional unblinding is quite straightforward. Every CNS drug has functional unblinding. If you're taking a benzodiazepine in a trial, you know you are. If you're taking an antipsychotic in a trial, you know you are. I saw a review of this the other day, a sertraline trial, so an SSRI trial. 100% of the patients in the trial knew they were getting the active drug. So this is just the nature of CNS development.
So Doug, I mean, speaking of compounds that have been approved, like esketamine, Spravato, from your knowledge, was this a huge topic of discussion at that AdCom meeting back when 2019 was? Do you recall if that was a huge topic?
I haven't personally gone back and looked into that. I know our team has gone through all of that stuff.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
But I think that the elements that we have in place to deal with functional unblinding should, I think, appease anyone with concern, right? So half a dozen things that we're putting into place. One is, as you know, a dose ranging study or a study with 3 arms, a high dose that's therapeutic, a mid dose that's subtherapeutic, and a placebo. And the population here is going to be psychedelic naive patients, for the most part, psychedelic naive. Those people will not have any idea if they're getting the high dose or the mid dose. And so they won't be able to guess that the dose they're getting is therapeutic. So the therapeutic effect, therefore, will be borne out in the data. On top of that, we are using blinded independent raters. So these are the folks that are externally, either through meetings with the patient or video comms with the patient. They're assessing the patient at baseline on depression scale, and they're assessing the patient after treatment. They have no idea whether the patient is getting the active dose, or an inactive dose. They have no idea if the patient experienced any side effects or hallucinogenic effects or euphoria or anything like that. They're completely blinded, so they're independent. Then for the facilitators in the study, we're using both manual and AI real-time screening of all those sessions because you want to pick up on any lack of fidelity. We want the facilitators to stick to the script. We don't want them going down the path where there's any bias or leading the patient in any direction, right? In the post-dose sessions. And also for patient safety. And then the last thing is long-term follow-up. With 1 year follow-up data points and everywhere in between there, you're not going to have expectancy bias or placebo effect that lasts for that long. We saw in phase 2 placebo wearing off by about 3 weeks. So that should allay any long-term concerns.
Yeah, absolutely. You already answered a lot of the questions I was going to ask you, Doug. So going to move on to here. The one thing that I actually, I have questions about, and a lot of the space does, because, the topic has been discussed for, I think, years at this point. Everyone's favorite topic, psychotherapy versus psychological support. So in my mind, just when I look at it, while preparation and dosing sessions seem to definitely not be psychotherapy, with preparation being mostly about giving informed consent and, maybe explaining what a patient might experience before dosing, and then the actual session itself involving not much talking due to the nature of classical psychedelics at higher doses. Now, with that said, I guess how would the integration sessions not be considered psychotherapy?
Yeah, look, when you look at psychotherapy studies, efficacy studies using psychotherapy, they take many, many months to have an effect. So that I think is a definition of psychotherapy. Now, you may use different tools, whether it's CBT, talk therapy, there's a whole number of different methods of what you might call psychotherapy, but they will take months and months to work. What we're doing here in the short term is we're encouraging the patient to talk and to explore what they experience and make sure there's no safety issues or ongoing side effects. But you can't really expect anything like that to lead to efficacy when you're only talking about a couple of sessions. It's really about psychological support and making the patient feel safe. And they're doing the work, they're unpacking what they experience. Sometimes it takes them a little while to unpack what they experience.
And Doug, I'm sure you would actually agree with this assessment that Guy Goodwin from Compass spoke about this, and it really struck me as very important. The fact that in their trials, on day one of dosing, there wasn't integration sessions yet. It might have been 1 or 2 preparation sessions. People had experienced a very strong antidepressant effect on day one, again, before those integration sessions. Do you also agree that that's very important to note?
Yeah, I think we're seeing very rapid effects, easily within a day, and typically the integration sessions, if you want to call them that, or the post-dose sessions are the day after. Give the patient a little bit of time to unpack it all. But yeah, really rapid responses. I mean, totally unlike SSRIs that take 6 or 8 weeks to work.
And so we know with the MDMA trials, there was 9 other psychotherapy sessions. So how many, I guess, follow-up sessions will there be for Cybin's phase 3 program after each dosing session? I believe you guys are looking at 2-3 weeks apart.
Yeah, two sessions 3 weeks apart. Sorry, 2 dosings, 3 weeks apart. There's only preparation for the first dose. There's only that informed education and consent for the first dose. But the second dose, they know what to expect. In fact, we see, interesting with the second dose is that with the first dose with our deuterated psilocybin, patients are sometimes a little bit apprehensive, a little bit nervous, a little bit skeptical. Maybe they don't want to fully let themselves trust the process. By the second dose, they're ready to jump all the way in. And for everyone in the study, the second dose was more intense, even though it was the same dose, more intense. So we don't need to do preparation for the second dose. But after the dosing, we allow them up to 3 sessions if they want to speak with a facilitator. It's totally driven by the patient and the facilitator. This is just clinical practice. When we come to market and sell, distribute these products, now we'll give the protocols, but the clinicians will decide what's needed. They'll decide if they need to see the patient again next month or the month after. That's just clinical practice. FDA doesn't mandate clinical practice, and so none of that will be, in the label.
I see. All right, great. Thank you. And Adam, I'm gonna pass it on to you for the viewers to learn more about Cybin and the company's current pipeline programs.
Thank you very much, Jake, and thank you, Doug. Just a quick question before I get into that. So, you mentioned deuterated psilocin. Are there any noted differences between the efficacy of psilocin compared to psilocybin?
Well, the main difference, of course, with psilocin is that it's the active agent
Mm-hmm.
and doesn't have to be metabolized. So metabolism is inefficient. So not all of psilocybin is converted to psilocin. You're losing some, and it's variable between individuals as well. So we've removed that metabolic step, made it more efficient, but also removed, we hope, some of the variability. Applying deuteration to that also appears to increase potency with these compounds, both with psilocin and with DMT. We're seeing effects at lower doses than we had initially expected to see. So combination of that, the psilocin and the deuteration means that we're seeing effects really rapidly within 15 minutes. So there seems to be some PK benefits, yeah.
Awesome. So, Cybin recently announced the completion of FDA Type B initial breakthrough therapy meeting and plans for CYB003 phase 3 program in major depressive disorder. Can you share with the viewers what Cybin was able to accomplish with this meeting? And for viewers new to learning about Cybin, can you share about what makes Cybin excited about the potential of CYB003 as the company moves into phase 3?
Well, also be on a little bit careful about speaking about FDA discussions because
Oh,
they are sensitive about this. But I will say this: I will say that we laid out our full program. So the phase 3 program, as we discussed with them at our end of phase 2 meeting in February, is 2 short-term studies, one with 2 arms, one with 3 arms, and then a long-term follow-up for a year that patients rolled over into. We aligned on that design. There's a number of other, background clinical, non-clinical studies that also need to go into the NDA. And you heard about some of those things were missing in the Lycos submission. So lots of that stuff we talked about, and we did talk about patient population. About how do we make sure that there's a naive population and not an experienced population. Those kind of elements, somewhat related to functional unblinding, but we didn't really get into that. I can tell you though that we had a large audience from FDA. They were very engaged, asked lots of questions, and were very collaborative. So regardless of what is being said about MDMA and the FDA, I don't see any negativity from the agency. I think they continue to be very positive about the promise for these compounds. So to answer your question about phase 3, Adam, I'm really excited about phase 3. We have 30 sites already selected. We've been very selective about those in that every one of them has previous psychedelic trial experience. So that means less training and ramp up time for us. All of them are DEA schedule licensed, so that means we don't have to go through the weeks or months process of getting them licensed. So the idea was to, optimize the ramp up time for each of those sites. Based on what we've seen, in phase 2, where we saw 75% remission rates so far out to 4 months.
yeah.
I can't wait to get started. So later this year in the fall, we're going to have 12-month data from that phase 2 study. I think we'd be the first to publish that. I'm not sure anyone else has shared 12-month data yet. But that's going to be really interesting. How many of those patients in remission at 4 months are still in remission at 12 months? What will the typical or average redosing time look like? It's definitely questions that FDA wants to understand, and it's definitely questions that payers want to understand. So we can talk about pricing and reimbursement around that. So honestly, I can't wait to get started, and very encouraged by the meeting we had last week. I couldn't have asked for a better meeting, frankly.
Yeah, it's extremely exciting. Cybin is also working with CYB004, deuterated DMT, for the treatment of GAD, generalized anxiety disorder. Can you please share with viewers about the path moving forward with this program?
Yeah, so we've done a lot of work with DMT. I'm not sure how much people realize that we've run 5 different studies with DMT and deuterated DMT. And the reason for all of that work is that it's not straightforward. It's not orally bioavailable. And the way you dose it and the route of administration is important. So when we gave a slow, long IV infusion, it was pretty terrible. I mean, patients just took a long time to get up into the DMT space, and they got anxious getting there, and many of them didn't actually break through. So that you don't really want to put patients through that. So it's not the best experience. We also tried an IV bolus followed by an infusion, and then an intramuscular formulation. So we know a lot about the PK/PD relationship. And what we've done with the combination of deuteration and the intramuscular formulation is that we've slowed down the breakdown of DMT. We don't want this rapid 10-minute experience. What we do want, though, is patients to get up into that breakthrough space quickly. So what we're seeing in the phase 2 so far is effects within 2-3 minutes, so really fast. And then the total duration is about 90 minutes, with patients spending most of their time in that tail period after the peak, which is where you want them to be, right? For doing. So we think from what we're seeing so far, we've got the ideal PK profile based on both deuteration and in intramuscular. So a 90-minute experience, study's going well. We should have top line phase 2 data right around the end of the year, probably slip into January, quite honestly, given the holidays and all of that. But if early Q1, we should expect to have some, I think, quite exciting data from that program.
Oh,
So,
sorry.
yeah.
Go for
No,
it,
it's
Jake.
okay. That's I'm really excited about CYB4, also CYB3. I'd like to ask you, perhaps you can't give an answer on this, but is it possible that if the data you see with CYB4 in generalized anxiety disorder, if that data is as compelling as we saw with CYB3 for major depressive disorder, is breakthrough therapy designation out of the question here for CYB4?
So it's interesting, when we saw that LSD was granted breakthrough therapy designation in GAD, that was helpful actually, because to meet the criteria for breakthrough therapy, the condition has to be life-threatening, and we weren't quite sure whether FDA would consider GAD to be life-threatening or not. But now we know it qualifies. We've run previous studies with regular DMT in depression, and we've taken anxiety scores in those studies. We know that DMT reduces anxiety. And this is a pretty intense experience, unlike LSD and psilocybin, as you guys know. So I think we're feeling pretty confident about it. And who knows? I mean, we could have 2 breakthrough therapy designations sometime next year if the data comes through as we expect.
That would be incredible, and also maybe not even surprising with the results we've been seeing from psychedelic compounds. It's incredible, and the work Cybin's doing is really exciting. I guess my last question here about CYB4. You've spoken in the past about how you could see CYB4 maybe being used in other anxiety disorders, maybe down the line. Can you share like which type of anxiety disorders might be of interest?
Yeah, I mean, when you add all the anxiety disorders together, social anxiety disorder, lots of phobias and various other things, they have a prevalence of about 18 or 19% of the population. So it's the largest group of mental health disorders, globally. What we're trying to do is create data to give physicians some choices. So we'll create data in GAD. We know that 70% of GAD patients likely have depression. And so we fully expect that if they do, those depressed patients will likely receive CYB4 for depression as well. We see doctors do it all the time.
I see.
Okay, you've got anxiety, but we'll say you have depression so you can get this treatment. They're quite flexible. So we're trying to build out a data set. I mean, I think that's what's really interesting about these compounds is that while we're talking about right now 2 conditions that are very large, we've got all these other areas that we could pursue, we hope to pursue going forward. PTSD, potentially, opioid use disorder, alcohol use disorder. I think the potential for that is really exciting. In most situations, you'd have to go and create another drug, right? Which takes years to get to the clinic. Here we hope we're going to be able to redeploy these treatments to many other patient groups in the future as well.
That's
So,
incredibly exciting. And we look forward to kind of how everything evolves. My final question is, so at Psychedelic Vantage, we have a strong presence across YouTube, Reddit, and Twitter, with a core audience largely consisting of retail investors. Given the recent news we spoke about with Lycos and CRL, what is your message to retail investors who might be discouraged right now?
Yeah, it's understandable. I mean, I'm a retail investor and an option holder, and so is every employee, right? So
Hmm.
none of us like this either. When we were starting out, none of us thought or expected that we would be in the longest biotech bear market in our lifetime.
oh my
Okay,
God.
so we've been forced to raise capital at low valuations, lower than the typical biotech valuations. And
Mm.
when you're early stage, equity is the only option. There's
Yep.
no tapping into large amounts of debt or other non-dilutive options at an early stage. It's just not possible, and also very, very risky
Mm.
as well at early stages. As companies evolve and they create more late stage data and get closer to market, then those other options start to open up. But we've had no choice but to
Yep.
raise equity. It's led to a large number of shares outstanding, and we
Hmm.
recognize that. We have our AGM coming up at the end of August, and we're voting on there for a share consolidation. That'll reduce the number of shares outstanding.
Hmm.
I think that's a good thing.
Yep.
Hmm.
I know that's not popular with retail investors, but the stock isn't reacting because there are a lot of float out there. Reducing the float might help the stock react better to news, which is
Yeah.
what retail investors would like. It also opens up purchasing to a whole bunch of institutions, mutual funds, indexes that can't buy the stock when it's a penny stock,
Hmm.
right? So that opens up a whole range of new buyers as well. So I understand, and I've seen some of the comments, some from the retail side, and I fully empathize. And yeah, I say I'm a retail investor as well, but um, this is the nature, unfortunately, of drug development. It takes a long time. It's
Yep.
very expensive. Hopefully, when we get through this consolidation, we can be on a healthier footing going forward.
That's very well said, Doug. Thank you so much for coming on the show today. We really appreciate you. You're one of our favorite guests. I hope everyone out there appreciated this and have a wonderful day. And thanks again, Doug and Jake.